The entire mansion came to a standstill, not because something broke, but because someone dared to do the impossible. Under the glittering chandeliers of Seoul, Madison, the elegant fiancée of millionaire Ethan Park, raised her hand to strike a female employee. But before the slap could happen, a firm hand grabbed her wrist, a hand that belonged to Emma, the new American maid who had started just 2 days ago. That simple gesture would change everyone's lives and reveal dark secrets that no one imagined. Ethan Park always entered any room quietly, even when everyone knew exactly who he was. At 33, he built Park Technologies with a rare blend of discipline, intuition, and patience. He didn't like to show off, avoided headlines, and preferred to be remembered for how he treated people. For many, he was living proof that success didn't have to come with arrogance. Employees described him as approachable, attentive, and genuinely polite. He remembered names, asked about families, and listened to genuine answers. This created an aura of quiet respect around him. No one felt afraid to speak with Ethan. There was trust, not tension, and that made all the difference. Behind that tranquil public image, Ethan harbored a simple desire that few knew about. He wanted to form a stable family, something he never fully experienced growing up. His work was always accompanied by this discreet emptiness, which he rarely verbalized. When he met Madison, he felt he might have found that long-sought balance. She was charismatic, elegant, and seemed to dominate any social setting with ease. By her side, Ethan felt part of a lighter, more glamorous world. Friends said they made a perfect couple. The photos, the events, and the smiles reinforced this narrative. Everything seemed to fit together too well, at least on the surface. Madison was 29 years old and possessed an effortlessly captivating presence. She knew exactly what to say, when to laugh, and how to behave around the right people. At events, she was praised for her confident posture and almost magnetic charm. To the society around her, she seemed sophisticated and self-assured. No one questioned her behavior when Ethan was around. She knew how to adapt her tone, soften her gestures, and control her expressions. It was as if she wore a mask tailor-made for that world, a convincing mask, and almost no one suspected what lay behind it. Inside the mansion, the atmosphere was different, heavier, more unstable. The luxurious corridors held silences that didn't appear in the photos. Staff avoided crossing paths with Madison alone, always attentive to her moods. Small mistakes were treated as major affronts. A misplaced glass could become a reason for humiliation. A minimal delay was enough for stifled shouts behind closed doors. Few commented, but everyone felt it. The tension was part of the routine, and yet no one said anything to Ethan. The longest-serving employees had learned to keep quiet for survival. Each one had their own story to hide, a moment they preferred to forget. Some left without saying goodbye, others resigned citing vague reasons. Turnover was high, but always explained with convenient excuses. The mansion was never empty of staff, only of permanent presence. Madison seemed not to care about that. For her, people were easily replaceable. What mattered was keeping everything under control, and control was something she demanded all the time. Ethan, on the other hand, spent much of his time away, traveling for work or immersed in meetings. When I was home, the atmosphere seemed calmer, almost normal. Madison's tone changed. A smile appeared. Her kindness was rehearsed. He didn't see the downcast glances or hear the whispered comments. The distance between what he believed and what actually happened grew silently. Not for lack of intelligence, but for overconfidence. Ethan believed in people, especially in her. Some employees even considered telling the truth, but gave up before trying. There was fear of not being taken seriously, fear of losing their jobs, fear of seeming exaggerated. Madison had a subtle way of turning stories around. Whoever complained always seemed to be the problem. Gradually, silence became the rule. and discomfort became part of the salary. Each day was counted as a quiet victory, until someone new arrived. Curiosity about the millionaire's fiancée grew outside the mansion walls. Inside, the feeling was different, more cautious, almost suffocating. No one knew how long this routine would last. What everyone knew was that something wasn't right, and that it only took one piece out of place for everything to start crumbling. The arrival of someone different seemed inevitable, and when that happened, nothing would remain the same. Emma Collins arrived at the mansion on a quiet morning, carrying a simple suitcase and even more modest expectations. She was 24 years old and had a calm demeanor that contrasted sharply with the size of the place she had just stepped into. Coming from a small town in Texas, she wasn't there out of ambition or curiosity. She needed stability, something she had never truly had. Her mother was ill, the bills were piling up, and this job seemed like a real chance to breathe. Emma didn't dream of luxury. She dreamed of security. And at that moment, that was everything. As she crossed the gate, she felt the weight of the atmosphere even before understanding why. The mansion was immaculate, but there was something cold in the air, a feeling difficult to explain. It wasn't the usual first-day nervousness. It was deeper, as if the walls held stories that no one told aloud. Emma noticed the quick glances of the staff, some curious, others cautious. Few smiled, and none seemed truly at ease. That caught her attention, but she continued on. Emma was always known for her gentle manner, but there was a quiet firmness within her. She grew up learning to respect people, but also not to accept disrespect. She didn't raise her voice, didn't make a scene, didn't impose herself by force. Her presence was serene, almost welcoming. In tense environments, this often bothered those who lived by control. She didn't know this yet. She simply did what she always did: observe, listen, and follow her principles. Even when the world around her seemed out of sync, in the first few minutes, she understood that this was no ordinary job. The tasks were clear, but the atmosphere was strange. There were unspoken rules, calculated gestures, and an excessive attention to the smallest details. A glass out of place seemed to generate more anxiety than it should. Emma realized that everyone acted as if they were constantly being evaluated, and, in a way, they were. She felt a slight tightness in her chest, but took a deep breath. She needed this job, and she didn't usually give up easily. As she was introduced to the routine, she noticed how Madison's name changed everything. The mere mention of it was enough to shift the tone of the conversation. Sentences became shorter, glances shifted. No one spoke openly, but the discomfort was palpable. Emma didn't ask anything. She'd learned early on that, in places like this, too many questions can be costly. She preferred to observe. And the more I observed, the more I understood that the serenity I carried was something rare in that place. During the break, a more senior employee cautiously approached. She spoke softly, as if sharing a dangerous secret. She said that most didn't last long, that there were things it was better not to witness. Emma listened without interrupting, feeling the weight of those words. There were no details, just loose warnings, almost pleas for caution. It didn't completely frighten her, but it triggered an internal alarm. Something there would require more than efficiency. It would require emotional balance. Emma thought about her mother, the expensive medications, the sleepless nights. She thought about how strong she needed to be. She couldn't afford to back down at the first sign of difficulty. At the same time, she knew how to recognize environments that tested human limits. This seemed to be one of them. Still, she kept her face calm and her gaze attentive. She didn't want to draw attention, at least not now. Her goal was simple: to do the job well and keep her dignity intact. Before the end of the day, an employee passed her in the hallway and spoke almost without moving his lips. He was direct, without beating around the bush, like someone who had seen too much. He said that everything there revolved around a single person, and that this person's mood decided everyone's fate. Emma paused for a second, surprised by the frankness. The warning came dryly, without drama, but laden with truth. He took a deep breath before finishing the sentence. "If Madison hates you, you won't last a week here." That evening's dinner seemed more like a carefully staged social event than a simple gathering of friends. The long table, the neatly arranged silverware, and the light conversation created an elegant, almost perfect atmosphere. Madison circulated among the guests with a practiced smile, complimenting dresses, commenting on travels, and overseeing every detail of the setting. Ethan was absent, tied up with last-minute commitments, and this disrupted the balance of the house. Emma noticed the difference right away. The air seemed heavier, as if everyone were paying too much attention to every movement. At one point, a waitress approached to serve the wine, following instructions exactly. Madison stared at the glass for a second longer than usual, and that brief silence said a lot. She frowned, raised her voice, and declared that the wine was wrong. It wasn't a discreet correction. It was a public accusation. The waitress tried to explain, stammering, while the guests looked away, embarrassed. Madison didn't allow a defense. Every word seemed carefully chosen to diminish her. The tone gradually escalated, as if humiliation were part of the evening's entertainment. Ironic comments, dry laughter, and rhetorical questions transformed a minor mistake into an uncomfortable spectacle. The waitress, visibly shaken, tried to remain composed, but her teary eyes betrayed the impact. No one intervened. Some guests pretended not to hear. Others fiddled with their cell phones. Emma watched everything in silence, feeling a knot forming in her stomach. This wasn't just a demand. It was cruelty disguised as authority. When dinner finally ended and the last guests had left, the mansion fell eerily silent, the kind of silence that precedes something bad. Madison paced back and forth, still irritated, as if she needed to release the rest of her pent-up anger. Emma discreetly gathered her belongings, trying to go unnoticed. It was then that the dry sound of a glass breaking echoed through the hall. The glass shattered across the gleaming floor, reflecting the dim light of the room. Madison looked coldly at Emma and pointed to the floor without saying much. She said it needed to be cleaned up immediately. There was no real urgency, just an imposition. Then came the order that changed everything. She ordered Emma to kneel and clean up the broken glass. The way she spoke left no room for interpretation. It wasn't about efficiency. It was about submission. The request hung in the air like a silent test. The few employees who were still nearby held their breath. Emma hesitated for an almost imperceptible moment, just enough to remember who she was. She thought of her mother, the reason she was there, how much she needed this job. Then slowly, she knelt down and began to carefully gather the pieces of glass. Her movements were firm, unhurried, without trembling. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. She didn't beg. She simply did what was asked. But there was something different in her eyes, something Madison didn't notice at that moment. While picking up the pieces, Emma kept her head down, but her eyes were alert. There was no fear there. There was awareness, a clear understanding that this crossed an invisible boundary. She wasn't broken. She was observing, taking in every detail, every gesture, every word. Madison turned her back satisfied, as if she had won a silent battle. She didn't imagine that this obedience wasn't surrender. It was only the beginning of something that didn't yet have a name. The other employees quickly dispersed, avoiding any eye contact. No one commented on what had happened. The rule there was clear. Silence was protective. Emma finished her work, stood up slowly, and left the room without saying a word. On the outside, it seemed like just another difficult night. Inside, something had changed. She now understood the kind of environment she was in, and she also understood that not every confrontation begins with words. The following morning, an unexpected detail began to circulate in whispers through the mansion's corridors. A valuable bracelet, which Madison used to wear frequently, had disappeared. No one knew when or how. The object simply wasn't where it should be anymore. The atmosphere, already tense, became even more unstable. And without realizing it, everyone began to look around suspiciously, as if that night had left much deeper marks than it appeared. The morning had barely begun when Madison entered the main room with quick steps and a closed expression. The sound of her heels echoed across the floor like a warning that something was wrong. The staff, who were organizing the day's routine, felt the atmosphere change instantly. There was no greeting, no pause. Madison went straight to the center of the room, taking a deep breath, her eyes fixed on a single point. Emma noticed even before she could speak. That fury had a target, and this time it was personal. Without mincing words, Madison accused Emma of stealing the missing bracelet. Her voice was loud, sharp, and filled with certainty. There was no doubt, only condemnation. She said that no one else would have access to the room, that this could only be the work of someone new. Silence filled the room. No employee moved. No one dared to interfere. Some lowered their heads. Others pretended to organize objects that were already in order. Fear was part of the air that hung in the air. Emma was caught off guard, but she didn't lose her composure. She felt her heart race, but maintained a firm posture. She looked directly at Madison and calmly denied the accusation. She spoke few words, without raising her voice, without aggression. Her voice came out steady, almost serene. That seemed to irritate her even more. To Madison, Emma's tranquility sounded like a challenge, as if that denial were a greater affront than the alleged theft. The tension grew almost physical. Madison took a few steps forward, closing the space between them. Her gaze was hard, her jaw clenched. She said she wouldn't tolerate lies in her home. She reinforced the accusation, repeating that the bracelet was too valuable to simply disappear. Emma remained motionless, holding their gaze. There was no fear there, only conviction. The silence of the other employees weighed more heavily with each passing second. Suddenly, Madison raised her hand. The gesture was quick, impulsive, charged with pent-up anger. For a moment, no one breathed. The movement seemed inevitable. Then something unexpected happened. Before the hand could descend, Emma reacted. She gripped Madison's wrist firmly, without violence, but without hesitation. The touch was enough to stop everything. There were no screams. There was no pushing, just the interruption of a boundary that had never been questioned before. The air in the room seemed to stop. Time slowed down strangely. The employees stared in shock, unable to comprehend what they were seeing. No one had ever dared to react that way. Emma didn't squeeze harder than necessary. She simply held on, looking directly into Madison's eyes. The gesture said a lot without saying anything. It wasn't a threat. It was a silent warning that something there had changed. Madison stood motionless for a few seconds, too surprised to react. The control she had always wielded with ease was slipping through her fingers. She tried to pull her arm away, but Emma held her position long enough to make it clear she wouldn't back down out of intimidation. Then she slowly released it, taking a step back. Respect in the room hadn't been restored. It had been redefined. Without saying anything more, Emma remained silent. She didn't try to justify herself beyond what was necessary. She didn't apologize for something she didn't do. Her posture spoke for itself. Madison, visibly shaken, tried to regain her authority with harsh words, but they no longer sounded the same. Something had been broken there, invisible yet irreversible, and everyone felt it. What no one in that room noticed was the silent presence behind the half-open door. Ethan had arrived early from a meeting and stopped when he heard the raised voices. He observed everything silently, unseen. He saw Madison's gesture, Emma's reaction, and the impact it had on everyone around them. His face remained serious, but something inside him was beginning to crumble. For the first time, he was seeing a reality that had never been told to him. Madison reacted with a sharp cry, demanding respect as if the word, spoken aloud, could restore lost control. Her voice echoed through the room, cutting through the heavy silence that had formed. She pulled her arm forcefully, but Emma didn't let go immediately, not out of defiance, nor out of anger, but out of firmness. The gesture was restrained, almost too restrained for the tension of the moment. This was not a common scene in that house. It was a boundary being upheld in front of everyone. The employees froze, unsure where to look. Some felt shame, others fear, others a strange relief. For the first time, someone wasn't backing down in the face of Madison's outburst. Emma kept her gaze steady, her breathing controlled, as if understanding that giving in at that moment would mean accepting something irreversible. There were no words, only presence, and that presence was more unsettling than any curt response. Madison realized this and lost even more control. It was at that exact moment that the door to the room swung open. Ethan entered, interrupting the scene with a silent shock. His presence changed the atmosphere immediately, almost physically. Madison froze for a second, too surprised to react. Emma slowly released her wrist and took a step back, maintaining her composure. The employees felt the weight of that instant. Everything that had been hidden was beginning to surface before the only person who had never seen any of it. Ethan observed the room intently, saying nothing at first. His eyes swept over Madison, Emma, and the tense faces around them. There was confusion, but also an unsettling clarity emerging. He didn't need lengthy explanations to understand that something was very wrong. The way Madison breathed, the way she gestured, the way she tried to quickly compose herself spoke volumes. The image he had of her was beginning to crack. Madison tried to take control of the narrative almost immediately. She spoke loudly, justified herself, demanded respect again, but her voice no longer sounded confident. There was too much haste, too much anger, too many words. Ethan listened to everything in silence, his face serious, attentive to every detail. For the first time, he didn't seem convinced. There was no acceptance in his gaze, only observation. Madison's social mask was beginning to slip before everyone's eyes. Emma remained quiet, not trying to defend herself at that moment. Her calmness contrasted sharply with Madison's nervousness. This did not go unnoticed. To an outsider, the difference between the two was clear. One tried to control by force, the other maintained boundaries without raising her voice. Ethan noticed this with discomfort. Something inside him resisted, but he could no longer ignore what he saw. The silence that followed was broken by slow footsteps coming from the hallway. An elderly woman entered the room with a firm posture and attentive gaze. Few there recognized her immediately, but Madison paled at the sight of her. It was Mrs. Lee, someone from the past whom she preferred to keep at a distance. Her presence was not accidental. There was a quiet authority about her, built over many years. The atmosphere became even more tense. Mrs. Lee observed the scene for a few seconds, unhurriedly, like someone connecting old dots. Her gaze swept over Emma, the employees, Ethan, and finally landed on Madison. There was no explicit judgment, only restrained disappointment. The woman took a deep breath before speaking, choosing her words carefully. Her voice was low, but firm enough to silence the entire room. "So this is how you treat people now?" The question hung in the air, laden with the past and its consequences. Madison opened her mouth to answer, but no sound came out. Ethan looked back at her, waiting, and in that instant it became clear that the story was far from over. Mrs. Lee's presence completely changed the dynamics of the room. She didn't need to raise her voice or assert herself physically. Her authority came from the history she carried and the way she observed every detail with serene attention. Madison tried to look away, but couldn't. There was something about that woman that easily dismantled defenses. Ethan realized this immediately. He felt that this visit was no coincidence, it was a consequence. And for the first time, he was willing to hear what had never been told to him. Mrs. Lee began to speak calmly, almost sadly. She said she had known Madison for many years, since she was a privileged young woman with few consequences. She said she had been her mentor at a renowned boarding school, where Madison had access to the best opportunities. But she also revealed that that place held an episode that should never have been forgotten. The room remained in absolute silence. Each word seemed to weigh more than the last. She explained that Madison was expelled from the boarding school after an episode of constant humiliation against another student. It wasn't an isolated incident, nor a misunderstanding. It was a pattern of behavior that escalated until it got out of control. The classmate, pressured and emotionally shaken, ended up seriously injuring herself after an extreme situation. Mrs. Lee didn't go into unnecessary details, but what she said was enough to make an impact. The air grew heavy. Some staff members felt a chill when they realized how closely this story connected to the present. Madison tried to interrupt, saying that was in the past, that she was exaggerating. Her voice, however, no longer had the same firmness. There was nervousness. There was defensiveness. Mrs. Lee kept her gaze fixed on her and said that time doesn't erase patterns when they are never confronted. The phrase echoed in Ethan's mind like a belated warning. He began to remember small situations he had always ignored. Harsh comments, sudden mood swings, stories that never quite came together. Ethan felt something break inside. It wasn't immediate anger, nor dramatic shock. It was a deep, silent, and painful doubt. Everything he thought he knew about Madison now seemed fragile, barely holding together. He realized how much he had trusted without questioning, how much he had preferred to believe the comfortable version of reality. He looked at Madison, expecting some sincere explanation, some sign of real regret. What he found was only impatience and denial. Mrs. Lee then turned her gaze to Ethan and spoke directly to him. She said she had tried to warn others in the past, but there had always been those who preferred to suppress stories to protect reputations. She said Madison had never truly dealt with the consequences of her actions. There was always someone to resolve, pay, or silence. Ethan's expression hardened. He didn't respond, but absorbed every word. Something inside him was beginning to reorganize itself, albeit painfully. Before Madison could regain control of the conversation, hurried footsteps echoed down the hallway. A man entered the room, his face pale and his eyes restless. It was Richard, Madison's father. His presence was neither announced nor planned. He looked weary, like someone carrying an old, burdensome weight. Seeing his daughter surrounded, he took a deep breath, hesitating for a second before speaking. The tension increased even more. Richard looked at Ethan, his voice trembling, a mixture of guilt and fear in his eyes. He said there were things that had never been said, not even within the family. He tried to maintain his composure, but failed. His hands trembled slightly. He knew this was a point of no return. Madison turned to him in shock, as if silently begging him to stop, but it was too late. The silence in the room became deafening. Then Richard said the sentence that changed everything. He spoke slowly, as if each word cost him a piece of himself. "She didn't tell you the worst part." The sentence hung in the air, too heavy to ignore. Ethan felt a chill run through his body. Madison's past still hid something bigger, something that no one there was prepared to hear. Richard paused for a few seconds before continuing, as if he needed to gather strength to cross that border. When he spoke, his voice came out low, broken, heavy with an old weariness. He recounted that years ago, Madison had been involved in an episode that changed the lives of many people, but never hers. He said it wasn't planned or intentional, but the result was irreversible. A domestic worker for the family ended up dying after a serious case of negligence. A young Filipina immigrant, discreet, almost invisible within that overly large house. The atmosphere became completely still. Richard explained that the girl had been working for them for a short time, always silent, always avoiding conflict. On one particular day, a trivial argument got out of control. Madison lost her temper, yelled, pressured, and pushed boundaries that shouldn't have been crossed. What happened next wasn't recounted in detail, only enough to make it clear that there was irresponsibility, negligence, and misuse of power. The silence that followed that day was never one of mourning. It was one of convenience. Richard confessed that the family intervened immediately. Lawyers were contacted, agreements were made, versions were adjusted. The case never gained widespread attention. Officially, everything was treated as a domestic accident with no direct culprits. The pain was silenced with money and influence. Madison was removed for a time, sent away, protected from the consequences. No one asked how the young woman's family fared. No one truly took responsibility. And the weight of that has followed Richard ever since. Ethan felt his stomach churn as he listened. It wasn't just the gravity of the story, but the ease with which everything was resolved. He realized how much that world operated under rules different from those he had always believed he followed. The success he had painstakingly built now seemed to touch upon a reality he had never wanted to see. He looked at Madison, expecting some human reaction, some sign of deep regret. What he saw was silence and rigidity, as if that story were an inconvenience, not a tragedy. Richard then revealed that the story was never truly buried. The young woman had an older brother, someone who never accepted the official version, a man who spent years trying to understand what really happened. His name was David Cruz. He never had access to expensive lawyers or influential contacts, but he had time and a memory. Richard said that David never stopped searching for answers and that now he was closer than ever. The next revelation hit like a slow blow. David was in Seoul, not by chance. He had been following clues, connecting pieces of information, getting closer to the heart of the story that destroyed his family. Richard had known about it days before, but hesitated to tell him. He was afraid of what it might cause, afraid of seeing everything crumble completely. Madison remained motionless, her eyes fixed on some distant point. For the first time, she seemed small in the face of her own past. Ethan felt a mixture of indignation and confusion. It wasn't just about Madison. It was about the system that allowed everything to be swept under the rug. He realized that the mansion, with all its luxury and silence, was part of that cover-up. The hallways seemed narrower, the air heavier. Nothing there seemed untouched by the truth. The story that was beginning to unfold demanded something no one was prepared to offer: responsibility. Before anyone could react, one of the security guards rushed into the room. His face showed tension and urgency. He hesitated for a second, weighing the importance of what he was about to say. All eyes turned to him. The silence was so intense that any sound seemed too loud. Madison finally blinked, as if jolted from an uncomfortable trance. The security guard announced that there was a man at the main gate, visibly agitated, demanding to see Madison. He said the man refused to leave and kept repeating a single name: David Cruz. The mention of that name made the atmosphere tremble. The past, which had been suppressed for years, was now outside, waiting to come in. The mansion gates opened slowly, as if the place itself resisted that presence. David Cruz entered, accompanied by his bodyguard, with firm steps and a tense body. He was tall, thin, and his face bore the marks of sleepless nights and years of waiting. His gaze didn't show explosive anger, but something deeper and harder to ignore. There was pain there, accumulated pain, organized, contained for too long. As he crossed the room, he wasn't distracted by anyone. His eyes met Madison's immediately, and they didn't look away again. The silence was absolute as he approached. Each step seemed to carry an untold story, an absence that never healed. Madison tried to hold his gaze for a few seconds, but failed. For the first time since everyone had known her, she was out of control. David stopped a few feet from her, took a deep breath, and spoke in a firm voice, without raising his tone. His words didn't need force. The weight came from the truth they carried. "You took everything from me. My sister died because of you." The phrase echoed through the room as if it were inevitable. There was no exaggerated accusation, no attempt at sensationalism. It was a tender statement made by someone who had lived with loss every day. The staff felt the impact as if it were physical. Ethan felt a tightness in his chest that he couldn't explain. Madison paled. The past, which had always been under control, now had a voice, a face, and a presence. Madison's legs gave way before she could react rationally. She fell to her knees on the polished floor, as if her body had given up trying to maintain the character. Tears came quickly, disordered, accompanied by disjointed words. She repeatedly apologized, her voice choked with emotion, saying she never wanted this to happen. For the first time, there was no rehearsal. There was no elegance, only raw, belated despair. David watched the scene without approaching. His face showed no satisfaction nor immediate relief, only weariness. He waited for the crying to subside before speaking again. He said he wasn't there to destroy anyone. He didn't want revenge, nor shouting, nor public humiliation. All he sought was justice. He wanted the story to be acknowledged, that his sister's death not be treated as an inconvenient detail of the past. Ethan watched everything in silence, feeling the ground shift beneath his certainties. The difference between the apology and David's pain was evident. One came too late, the other never paused. He realized that some apologies don't repair damage. They only expose how long it took to act. That confrontation didn't need any more words. The truth was already there, laid bare before everyone. Madison tried to approach, extending her trembling hand, but David took a step back. There was no aggression, only boundaries. He said that forgiveness wasn't something that could be demanded, that it might never come, and that accepting that was also part of the responsibility. The words struck Madison differently. The crying stopped for a moment, replaced by a stunned silence. It was at that moment that a seemingly small detail shifted the focus of the room. An object slipped from Madison's pocket and fell to the floor with a dry thud. The cell phone slid a few centimeters and stopped with its screen lit, illuminating the room with a recent notification. Some eyes automatically turned to the device. Ethan was one of them. Something about that message immediately caught his attention. The air grew heavy again, now for a different reason. David's arrival had brought the past to the surface. But that cell phone indicated that there were still secrets in the present, secrets that Madison perhaps never intended to reveal. And, at that moment, it became clear that the truth was not yet complete. Ethan approached the cell phone on the floor with slow steps, as if each movement required effort. He picked up the device, and the screen was still lit, displaying a recent conversation. He didn't hastily snoop around. He simply read what was there, exposed, almost as if he wanted to be found. The messages were direct, cold, calculated. Madison spoke of the marriage as a financial plan, an advantageous arrangement, a quick path to an even more comfortable life. There was no affection in the words, only strategy. As he scrolled through the screen, the feeling of unease transformed into something deeper. The messages revealed comments about contracts, assets, influence, and control. Madison wrote like someone running a business, not a relationship. She talked about timing, about keeping up appearances, about patience until the right moment. Ethan felt his face heat up, but not from immediate anger. It was disbelief. The image he had built of her was beginning to crumble silently, piece by piece. Among the files on the phone, one recording caught his attention. Ethan hesitated for a second before pressing play. Madison's voice filled the room, too light for the content it carried. She laughed as she spoke, as if she were telling something funny to someone she trusted. There was no hesitation, no guilt, just certainty. The words came out clear, impossible to misinterpret. As soon as I get married, everything will be mine, and if he tries to leave me, I'll destroy him. The impact was immediate. The phrase echoed in the room, affecting everyone, but especially Ethan. It wasn't just emotional betrayal. It was confirmation that he had never been seen as a partner, only as a means. The silence that followed was heavy, almost suffocating. Madison tried to say something, but no explanation seemed possible given her own unfiltered voice. Ethan felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. Everything he believed he was building had been based on a carefully sustained lie. The kindness, the trust, the devotion, it all now seemed out of place, almost naive. He didn't scream, he didn't argue. He just took a deep breath, trying to reorganize his thoughts, which were clashing with each other. The pain didn't come in the form of tears. It came as a sudden emptiness. He looked up and stared at Madison one last time with the same intimacy that had once existed. There was no hope left. Not enough anger to sustain a long confrontation. Only a decision. Ethan said the wedding was off. The sentence came out firmly, without trembling, as if it had been rehearsed within him for some time. Madison reacted with despair, trying to get closer, but he kept his distance. Then, Ethan did something no one expected of him. He asked for the authorities to be called and handed over the cell phone, the messages and the recording, not out of revenge, but out of consistency. He knew he could no longer be complicit in the silence, that protecting that story would be repeating the same mistake as so many others. The employees' expressions mixed shock and relief. Something was finally being done. Madison began to cry again, this time differently. It wasn't just guilt. It was the loss of control. She said she loved him, that everything had spiraled out of control, that she never imagined it would come to this. The words tumbled over each other, but there was no more room for comparison. Ethan didn't answer. Some truths, once revealed, allow no return. As Madison was led out of the room, Ethan remained motionless for a few seconds. The sound of her footsteps receding seemed to mark the end of an entire phase of his life. He knew that nothing would be simple from then on. There would be consequences, headlines, trials, but there was also something new emerging amidst the chaos, the chance to start over without lies. And amidst that emotional turmoil, a silent detail remained in the background. Emma observed everything from a distance, without interfering. Her role in that story was not yet complete, and Ethan was beginning to realize that some people enter our lives not to stay, but to awaken us. Madison was led out of the mansion amidst tears and disjointed phrases, repeating that she loved Ethan as if that could change anything. Her voice echoed through the corridors, now empty of allies and filled with gazes that no longer lowered. There was no applause or satisfaction in the air, only a dense silence, heavy with closure. The glamour that had always accompanied her seemed to have been left behind, dissolved under the weight of her own choices. Each step towards the exit felt definitive. The house, once controlled by her, breathed differently, as if something toxic had finally been removed. Inside, David remained motionless, trying to process everything that had just happened. His shoulders relaxed almost imperceptibly, like someone who has carried a burden for too long and can finally let it go. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes for a moment. When he spoke, his voice came out lighter, though still heavy with emotion. He said he wouldn't get his sister back, but that, for the first time, he felt her story had been heard. That was enough to move on. Today, my sister can rest. The words didn't demand a response. They were a silent acknowledgement of belated, yet necessary, justice. Ethan heard it as a stark reminder of the impact silence can have on someone's life. He nodded, unsure of exactly what to say. No words could repair years of pain, but there were actions that, even belatedly, could change the course of things. He knew that now. Gradually, the employees began to disperse, still stunned by everything they had witnessed. Some exchanged glances of relief, others of reflection. The mansion seemed larger and brighter, as if the space had been reorganized from the inside. The fear that had previously dominated the atmosphere gave way to a new kind of caution. It wasn't euphoria, it was awareness. Everyone knew that this day would mark a before and after. Ethan walked toward Emma with calm but purposeful steps. He paused before her for a few seconds, as if searching for the right words. He thanked her simply, directly, without an elaborate speech. He said she had the courage to act when everyone else was silent, that her firmness revealed a truth he had avoided seeing for too long. Emma listened silently, her eyes attentive, not seeking recognition. For her, it was never about confrontation. It was about boundaries. She responded briefly, saying she only did what she believed was right. That it's not always easy to take a stand, especially when everything around encourages silence. Ethan understood. For the first time, he felt that the kindness he had always practiced needed to go hand in hand with responsibility. Being good didn't mean turning a blind eye. It meant acting when something was wrong, even if it cost him comfort. The day passed without ceremony. There was no celebration, no exaggerated promises, just the feeling that something had been put in its right place. David said goodbye with a grateful look and left the mansion without looking back. Emma returned to her routine with the same serenity as always, but now carrying the certainty that her presence had truly changed something and that no one could take away from her. Ethan stood alone for a few minutes, reflecting on all that he had lost and all that he might have gained. He knew that rebuilding would take time, that trust doesn't rebuild quickly after being broken, but he also knew that he had learned a lesson that didn't appear in books or contracts, something simple, profound, and definitive that echoed in his mind with rare clarity. Being kind is not being weak. It's being strong enough to not allow evil to happen. The mansion regained its peace almost imperceptibly, as happens when silence ceases to be oppressive and becomes welcoming. There were no announcements or major visible changes, but the atmosphere was different. Ethan began to move through the corridors with more presence, listening more than speaking. Part of his fortune was donated to foundations that protect domestic workers, not as a gesture of publicity, but as a conscious act of reparation. For him, it was a personal commitment to everything he had ignored before. Each donation carried the weight of a belated, yet necessary, choice. Emma took over managing the household with the same serene demeanor she had always had. Nothing had changed in her essence, only the scope of her decisions. For the first time, the employees felt safe to speak up, make mistakes, and learn. Respect was no longer imposed, but built day by day. Emma led without rigidity, showing that firmness doesn't need to be harsh. That night, sitting alone in her room, she wrote a simple letter to her mother, telling her that she was well, that she had grown more than she had imagined possible, and that she finally understood the value of standing up for herself. Sometimes, all the world needs is one person to say, "Enough is enough." Ethan read that sentence days later, by chance, and felt it summed up everything he had experienced. How many times could he himself have said enough and chosen the comfort of silence? How many stories don't change because someone decides to look the other way? The mansion was just a setting, but the lesson was bigger. It wasn't about wealth, status, or power, but about choices made when no one is watching, about silent courage, about empathy put into practice. Did this story touch you in some way? At what point did you realize that silence can also be a form of error? How many times has life given you the chance to act and you hesitated? Courage and empathy change destinies, sometimes slowly, sometimes all at once, but always definitively. If you believe in this, keep walking with stories that go beyond the surface. Subscribe to the channel and activate notifications to follow more real and inspiring stories like this one, about truth, redemption, and the strength of a righteous heart.